Good morning. I'm Mayor Tommy Roberts. Welcome back to the Mayor's Table. My guest this morning, once again, is Rob Mays, our city manager. And Rob, it's good to have you again.
It's always good to be here.
Rob, we recently had some news coming out of Public Service Company of New Mexico. They released the results of their integrated resource plan. And the content of that plan is giving us some level of consternation here at the local level, because the plan itself indicates that PNM feels it may be better for their customers to abandon operations and production at San Juan Generating Station. And they're talking about effecting that abandonment at the end of the current contract period, which ends in 2022. What was your reaction to the news and the content of that integrated resource plan?
Well, we keep in mind that the plan is a planning document that helps them map out their needed resources in the future matched with projected demands. My reaction was we were shocked, from a variety of positions. We were shocked from our ownership position in the San Juan plant, where we have ownership for the Farmington Electric Utility. So we certainly have felt that there was a commitment by PNM to continue to operate that asset for years to come. So really it was a kind of a 180-degree change, and so I think shocked is probably a fairly good answer to your question.
Well, we have an ownership interest in Unit 4 at San Juan Generating Station, as you mentioned. It's about an 8% ownership interest in that unit. Our overall interest in the plan was close to 3%, I believe, when it was fully operating. Mm-hmm. 2 of the 4 units are going to be shut down if they haven't already been shut down. And so the plan was to operate it into the future as a 2-unit configuration. So now we're looking at the full and complete closure of the plant 2022, unless some different course of action is taken. It would appear that PNM is set on a course of ceasing operation at San Juan Generating Station in 2022. As you mentioned, it has a potentially huge economic impact on Farmington and San Juan County and the surrounding region. There are 650 jobs, direct jobs associated with the operation of the plant. Some of those jobs in the form of mining jobs at San Juan Coal Mine, that's operated and owned by Westmoreland Company. And then the remainder of those jobs are direct at the plant itself and tied to the actual generation operations at the plant. So you lose 650 more jobs out there. We've already lost a number as a result of the mothballing of 2 units. Right. We lose 650 more. I've been told that each of those jobs has a value of about $100,000 a piece. So that's a value of about $65 million of wage, salary associated income in our community that we lose the benefit of. Whatever spending power is associated with that $65 million, we lose it.
That's right. And there's also, of course, the trickle down. That's the direct jobs. Four Corners Economic Development Agency did an economic impact study, and it showed a 2.43 to 1 ratio. So every 1 job in the economic base job lost out at the mine, there's a 2.43 additional jobs. The total job loss is estimated at somewhere around 1,600, just under 1,600 jobs. The total economic loss to the state of New Mexico, about 170 million in total. So it's not just a Farmington or San Juan County issue. This is really a statewide issue. We've been told in discussions that this is the 2nd or 3rd largest industrial complex in the state of New Mexico. And so what we're hoping to happen is that the state of New Mexico, our governor, our legislature, other leaders around the state will recognize this just isn't a Farmington issue. This is a major economic impact on our entire state, our school systems, our state revenues, and of course, county and the city.
Of course, San Juan County government relies in significant part on the property taxes generated by San Juan Generating Station. So that's a part of the economic impact on San Juan County. The state is receiving severance taxes from the production of coal. I'm not sure if there's a royalty there or not. I believe there is. There's a royalty revenue stream associated with coal extraction as well. Of course, there's a number of corporate taxes that are derived from the operations of private sector industry in connection with the coal industry. So the number is fairly staggering, and these are numbers that are impactful even in the best of economic scenarios, but we aren't living in the best of economic scenarios in the state or the county or the city. So it's another challenge. It's a huge challenge. The question is, how do we respond as leaders in our communities at the local level? Do we just accept this as a done deal and say we're just going to have to learn to adjust to it, adjust to the loss of revenue, adjust to the loss of jobs? Or is there an opportunity to be an advocate for the continued operation of San Juan Generating Station beyond the planning horizon of 2022? Let's talk a little bit about what's going on at Four Corners Economic Development Service.
Well, to answer kind of the rhetorical question, do we just accept it or laying down, or do we fight and do everything we possibly can? You have pledged and others have pledged that we as a city will do everything that we can to save these jobs for these families, as well as the overall trickle-down impact. So through Four Corners Economic Development, our economic development arm, as we've said many times, instead of having our own economic development department, we have embraced a regional strategy. And I think for times like this, that regional strategy really shows itself to be critical when we're dealing with something like this that goes far beyond Farmington. So we've talked about a three-legged stool of an approach, and the area of the working through the PRC, both in the IRP process, but in the potential abandonment process that's still to follow, hoping to get the state to take into consideration the widespread impacts on our state and really every citizen in the state of New Mexico affected by $170 million of statewide lost revenue. A second leg through the legislative process to engage our legislature again in educating them and getting them to engage in this reality that if this particular revenue source goes away, where do they plan to make it up for? You can't just keep moving away from certain fuel sources and other areas in favor of others, or subsidizing one in favor of another. Ultimately, that tax revenue has to be made up somewhere at the consuming end. And then finally, we have even talked about the really big idea of seeking and promoting ownership of this plant through merchant investors, maybe outside investors, that venture capitalists that might come in and actually pick up where PNM is exiting, and perhaps invest in this plant and be positioned for the future of selling electricity on the market through the merchant power.
I think one of the things that we really need to stress in trying to educate people about the implications of the closure of the plant is that coal is a commodity. You can produce something real, something tangible, take it out of the ground and use it in a productive way. Oil and natural gas are commodities as well. So when we extract those products, they're taxed in a way that provides a revenue stream to state government and to local governments to some extent. But the state relies heavily on that flow of tax revenue that's associated with the extraction of those commodities. If we're advocating for a totally renewable energy portfolio, we have to bear in mind that the sun and the wind are not commodities. We haven't devised any way to tax solar and wind. And so there's going to be a policy challenge there to many, many people involved in government and responsible for providing services to their citizens to find a replacement for that stream of significant revenue that will be lost.
That's right.
I believe that we've got to have a strategic plan involved that involves all of our energy resources. solar, wind, nuclear, coal, natural gas, oil. I think they all have a place in our energy portfolio, and they can work off one another, and they can be utilized in conjunction with one another for the effective and efficient use of our resources. I don't know how we're going to get beyond that, but that's going to be one of the consequences that we have to deal with. The PRC process, the Public Regulatory Commission process, is one that is of interest to us. Ultimately, PNM will have to file an application for abandonment of the plant, and the Public Regulatory Commission will be that state regulatory agency that considers that application for abandonment. So one of the prongs of attack would be to try to convince the Public Regulatory Commission that abandonment's not in the best interests of the state and the local communities. What's your best guess about the success of that effort?
Well, again, I mean, I think all of these efforts are a uphill climb. We need to be realistic about them, but nevertheless, we have to do all that we can. And currently, the rules are defined very narrowly, that the PRC would only take into account the rates, the ratepayers, and the recovery of costs by PNM. What we would want people to understand, that there are other losses. These same ratepayers are going to be affected by, statewide by other losses to state revenue, and so they may end up paying more somewhere else and paying less here. I mean, there's two misconceptions that I actually came across just yesterday from people fairly knowledgeable that ought to know. One is that someone thought that if the coal plant was to continue beyond 22, that hundreds of millions of dollars had to be spent in upgrading technology to keep that plant going. That's just not true.
Those upgrades have been made.
They've been done.
In full compliance with emission standards that have been established.
And the ratepayers of PNM are going to be paying for those things. Additionally, so if another operator would want to come in and take over where PNM wants to step away, they would not have hundreds of millions of dollars. They'd have virtually no investment in capital associated with environmental issues. That plant already exceeds even the Clean Air Act had it passed. The second issue is a lot of well-meaning people suggest, well, why don't they just convert that plant to natural gas? Then we can have the best of both worlds, a cleaner fuel, one that's produced locally, but we have to keep in mind and remind people almost daily, it seems, it comes up, and we've had people post on our Facebooks, why don't you convert it to natural gas? The natural gas plant out there for the associated megawatts is about 30 jobs. And there'd be certainly associated another 2.4% or 2.4 for each of those 30. But when you compare 30 direct jobs to 657 direct jobs, there just is no comparison on the economic impact. Converting that plant to natural gas does not help our economy or save any of these jobs. So they're at risk.
Well, it's a troubling problem, and it's one that's going to require a lot of thinking and collaboration to solve, to hurdle. It may very well be that we'll be approaching 2022 and recognizing that plant will no longer be in operation. There's a strong likelihood that will be the case. And then we'll be dealing with the fallout of that problem, the lost jobs, the lost revenue to government to provide the kinds of services that our citizens have come to expect and to appreciate. I'm intrigued by the purchase option, and we're going to be spending quite a bit of time at our level exploring those options and opportunities. But one thing that I would like to assure those in our viewing audience who are concerned about what's going to happen ultimately at the plant is that we are going to be engaged at Rob's level and my level and other different levels. We're going to be engaged in that discussion about, are there solutions that would provide for the continuance of the operation of the plant beyond 2022? We would recognize that this is not going to be an operation in perpetuity. There's a finite life left for that plant. But we think that it has a reasonable lifespan beyond 5 more years. And we could reasonably be looking out into the 10-year life, maybe the 15-year life. but a lot of challenges, a lot of hurdles to be cleared before we can even get to that kind of a discussion about interest. But my point is, for those who are viewing, is that we are engaged in that process, going to be doing what we can to have that discussion, to explore all avenues available to us. Rob, is there anything else you'd like to add on this topic?
Maybe two things. One, I want to thank you for your leadership in this. You stood in front of several hundred coal miners and pledged that you would do everything within your power, within your influence, and you have been doing that. A lot of work behind the scene has already happened, and there's much more to come, so I appreciate your leadership as our mayor. And the other thing is another comment that you have been pointing out, to we have to also maintain optimism. We're certainly not ready to concede that this plant's going to close. But if it does, we as a community will find a way to move on. This is one big hurdle, but there are other things happening in our economy, other good things happening that we certainly still have a good future in the city of Farmington and for our residents here.
Rob, I appreciate your insight and observations on this issue. Thanks for being with me this morning. I want to thank all of you for tuning in this morning and viewing this segment of the Mayor's Table, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next Monday.